Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Evolution Network. I'm Joseph Potter, as always, joined by Chris Ransom. And today we've got a fun show for you. We are going to be working with we're going to go over some NFL scores, then we're going to be working with the conference championship. And when done with the conference championship games, we're going to go to what few bowl games already been mentioned. So we're right into it, and we're gonna get to some of these games, and Chris will jump in when he gets to his featured games this week. First off, we have the Texans and Ravens, and Joe Flacco. Okay, that's
These
for
teams play
tonight.
tonight on
So
ESPN.
yeah, that's for tonight. Yeah, I was looking at the
Yeah, I've
first
got an order
game
for the
for
games.
the
Do you want me to just start with the
yeah.
very first game that took place on Thanksgiving?
No,
Go through that, and then because
I've
that
got this. I've got this. You. I've
all
got this,
right,
Chris.
all right,
We're
all right,
good.
Joey, all right,
It's like
all right. You
I'm
got
just
this.
gonna
All
say
right,
Joe
all right.
Flacco had
You also
1,700
got
yards
this.
in the game. So
You got this.
yeah, yeah. Is it? Yeah. And Joe Flacco did not have 1,700 yards before the game even started. I'm sorry. To all you Rays fans out there. So the Vikings defeat the Lions. Case Keenum with another strong thing, 21-30, 2 touchdowns. Davius Murray with 20 carries, 84 yards, 1 touchdown. And Marvin Jones for Detroit with 6 receptions, 100 yards, and 2 touchdowns as the Vikings beat the Lions in a pretty decent
Well, this
game.
game was the first of the 4 featured games, and there were a lot of notable moments in it. It looked like it was going to be a very disappointing game compared to last year's Classic. And then penalties really killed Detroit, though. I'd say it was a combination of Case Keenum, 21 for 30, 282, 2 touchdowns, no picks, and penalties. But the penalties that Detroit had, even though they had fewer penalties than the Vikings, the penalties that Detroit had absolutely killed their status in terms of winning this game, because there was a play where a penalty negated a Detroit touchdown at one point in this game, and there was another play where Stafford audibled Travolta, like John Travolta, and the play got overturned, so they had to settle for a field goal. And there was a blocked field goal that Detroit returned for a touchdown, but because a player was offsides, Minnesota won the game at the end. So it felt like, if you were a Lions fan, it felt like the official screwed you over on Thanksgiving. I mean, Galladay had a 41-yard touchdown from Stafford, so there were some moments for the Lions in this game, but total sheer domination by the Vikings in the first half. They did just enough early in this game to make it so that Detroit never had a chance to come back, even though you got to give the Lions a lot of credit for fighting back into this game.
Yeah, and next game we had the Chargers defeat the Cowboys. Philip Rivers was with a spectacular game, 27-33, 434 yards, 3 touchdowns. Melvin Gordon with 20 carries, 65 yards to lead the Chargers in carries. And Keenan Allen just a monster game with 11 receptions, 172 and a touchdown. Allen and Rivers were clicking on all cylinders in the game, and the Cowboys without Elliott, Tyron Smith, it's not something that the Cowboys could ever come. 2 of the best players in the league out. There was just nothing they could do as Chargers.
You pretty much took
The
all the
Redskins
stats.
defeated Ants.
You pretty much said everything I wanted to cover with the Chargers-Redskins game. And this Giants-Washington game is just a very horrible game. So go ahead and break it down, the box score.
Yeah, it's Kirk Cousins was 19 of 21, 242 yards, 2 touchdowns. It led Washington with 24 carries, 100 yards, and Jason Crowder had 7 receptions, 141 yards, and a touchdown to lead Redskins over Giants 2010. I can tell that it probably wasn't a game if the Giants were allowed to get 10 points and the Redskins only got 20.
It was 3-3 at one
And
point
moving
at
on,
halftime, and I was literally asking myself that, is this game going to end in a tie? Because it was 10-10 after 3 quarters, and I was literally asking myself if this game was going to end in a tie, because a few weeks ago on this show you predicted, I think it was the last show we did, you actually predicted the Niners-Giants game would end in a tie in San Francisco, and I was literally asking myself if this game would end in a tie. The Washington Giants game.
Yeah. And the next game of your group of nice little games that you got for me is the Browns and Bengals. Deshaun Kaiser didn't blow it for the first time in his career. He was 18 of 31, 268 yards. Joe Mixon was the best game of his career for Cincinnati. 23 carries, 114 yards, and a touchdown.
Yeah, I tagged you in a post about this game yesterday. I even mentioned how many rushing yards. This was his first career 100 rushing yard game. Mixon only has like 484 yards on the year, but he got at least 100 of those yards in this game against Cleveland. So I'm not sure if that's a testament to how pedestrian Cleveland's run defense is, or if that's a testament to how Mixon is. So there's definitely some good and bad qualities.
Cleveland's run defense. Well, Cleveland's run defense isn't exactly pedestrian. They're one of the top 5 in the NFL. But I think it's a testament to Joe Mixon because, let's face it, the only thing the Browns are really good at is their defense. And that's the whole thing about it. Joe Mixon just had a great game, and it's something that we've been expecting all year from him.
I have not been expecting Mixon to do crap.
You can't really.
You may have been expecting Joe Mixon to do things because he's your #1 running back. I had 3 running backs ahead of Mixon, including McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, and Fournette. I was not as high on Mixon as you were. I liked Samaj Perine coming out of Oklahoma better than Mixon, but Mixon aced the draft process despite the controversy off the field. And this is the finally the first game where Joe Mixon actually put everything together and played well, both as a runner and a pass catcher. And I was a much bigger fan of Perine coming out of Oklahoma than Mixon, and Perine had more success to begin the year. So I mean, this is a good game for Mixon, but this offensive line has had issues. But an interesting stat with the Bengals is whenever Joe Mixon gets 20 carries, they're 2-0. They had 20 carries in the Week 11 game. He had 23 carries against the Browns this week. So the Bengals are 2-0 this season when Joe Mixon gets 20 carries. So it took the Bengals 10 games to realize they need to give Mixon the ball at least 20 times to have a shot at winning. And that makes the Bengals one of the more interesting teams down the stretch. Because if Mixon gets 20 carries a week, can the Bengals actually win out and fight their way into the wild card hunt? I don't think they can, but who knows?
Yeah, and this is something that it's possible for Cincinnati, but let's face it, let's not get too slap happy here because other than Mixon's performance, let's face it, they were playing the Browns, okay? The Browns are 0-11 for a reason. This is the first time Deshaun Kaiser didn't outright cost them a game.
Well, the Bengals are currently number 8 in the AFC. They're 1 game back of the wild card. They do own a tiebreaker over the current 6 seed, the Bills. and they play the Steelers next week on Monday Night Football. So they're probably going to lose that game, but if they can win it, they're going to put themselves in the driver's seat to get a wild card. So huge game for Cincy next week. But we'll get to those teams later. What's the next game?
We will. Next game is Tampa Bay and Atlanta. Atlanta wins 34-20, 7-4. Matt Ryan with a big game, his second in a row, 26-35, 313 yards, 1 touchdown. Tvongman, 19 carries, 96 yards, 2 touchdowns. Julio Jones with a murder outing, receptions, 3 yards, downs, absolute spectacular.
Yeah, 12
this game
receptions,
for
253
any
receiving touchdowns. It's
or
just hard to
any
hear
at any
audio from this. That's why. All right, what's the next game?
Next game is the Colts losing to the Titans 20-16. Jacoby Brissett, 17 for 20, 190 yards. Henry for Tennessee, 3rd reception, 13 carries, 9 yards. Jack Doyle led Annapolis in receiving, 7 receptions, 94 yards. Brissett with an impressive game. It's not enough to overcome Tennessee, who just
they stepped up on the defensive side of the ball, though.
Victory.
They had 8 sacks on Brissett, and Brian Arakpo getting 1.5 of those sacks, meaning Costanzo now has allowed 7.5 sacks in 2017 at left tackle, which is the exact same number he gave up during his rookie year when the Colts went 2-14 without Peyton Manning. And this season feels a lot like that season, even though this is a better team with more talent. But, yeah, it feels like a very similar season to that season.
Yeah, and the next game is the redemption game as Tyrod Taylor leads Bills 16-10 over the Chiefs, fall to 6-5. The Chiefs, who were 6-1 at one, or 5-1 or 7-1 at one point, have dropped 3 or 4 straight. The Alex Smith 20-36, 190 yards and a touchdown. LaShawn McCoy led Buffalo in rush, 22 carries, 49 yards. Charles Clay led Buffalo in running, 4 receptions, 60 yards. And other than Alex Smith's 199, Buffalo pretty much led them to their defense, led them to victory here.
Well, these teams were pretty even in terms of passing yards, third down conversions. These teams were very even in terms of penalties. Like, these teams were even all across the board statistically in a lot of categories. And this was a game where it came down to who had the ball last. And Alex Smith choked under pressure. And Alex Smith really did a much better job in this third quarter, opening up 5 for 5 with a touchdown drive. But that was pretty much the peak of Alex Smith's day. I mean, he began the day 4 for 11 with 41 passing yards. The Chiefs were 0 for 5 on third down conversions in the first half. Buffalo won the first down battle 13-1 in the first half. And it was at the point where Alex Smith was playing so brutal that Mike Florio actually stopped watching a football game to do a blog entry about how the Chiefs need to start Patrick Mahomes. And you've got all this controversy right now about whether the Chiefs are going to start the guy they traded up from number 27 to 10 to see if they're going to get that player. And it's amazing that this is what it's coming to right now. With Buffalo, they led 10-0 at halftime. And, I mean, Alex Smith just struggled in this first half. So it was 13-3 at halftime, I believe. So, yeah, I mean, this is just – it's amazing that Kansas City is playing this poorly, because I had them at 6-5 at this point in my season preview, Joey, when I went through the game-by-game outlook. But I had them starting 2-5, turning to Mahomes, and then the team going on a winning streak. But the exact opposite has happened. This team started 5-0, and they've choked down the stretch. I expected them to be at this record at this point But at the same time, I was expecting them to struggle early and dominate late, but the exact opposite has happened. And people are wondering if Mahomes is going to start, because I read an article in the Kansas City Star 2 weeks ago that Patrick Mahomes is watching 4 games of opponents' tape a week. Alex Smith is only watching 3. Even though he's still the leader, he's focusing more on practicing and less on watching the tape, watching the fundamentals. And some coaches in the organization outside of Andy Reid think that Smith's losing his edge or he's becoming lethargic. So if that's the case, I would seriously look into starting Mahomes this week versus the Jets. There's 5 games to go. You only lead this division by 1 game now, and if the Chiefs don't make if Smith doesn't fix things at quarterback, or if the Chiefs are too gun shy to start Mahomes, or it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this Chiefs quarterback situation. You got any thought?
Yeah,
you got any thoughts on this?
that's something we're gonna have to look for, because I I don't think they're good at Mahomes right now. I do believe Mahomes will order next, whether they go to him by the end of the season or not. So that's something we're going to have to look at, not only as the season goes, we're going to have to pay attention to it, but during the season, what they do with Alex Smith. The next game is your Patriots defeating the Dolphins, moved to 2 by a score 35-17. Tom Brady 18 of 28 or 27 yards through 4 touchdown passes. D. Lewis with one of his bigger games, 15 rushes, 112 yards. And Brandon Cooks with 6 receptions, 83 yards and a touchdown. The Panthers win 35-20 over the Jets. Josh Brown continues to the fountain of 9 of 36, 307 yards, 3 touches. Christian McCaffrey, 7 carries, 2 yards. Robian at 6 receptions, 140 yards, touchdowns for the Jets. Carolina has yet to get McCaffrey involved in the rushing game as a major contributor. Chris, what do you have to say about McCaffrey not balled at this as running back?
Well, the Patriots, I like what the Patriots did with Brady, Gronkowski, Rex Burkhead. They just brought everything to the table. And the irony is I picked the Patriots to win 28-17. So I was only off by a touchdown, but I figured Miami would cover the 16.5 on the spread. And with New England getting that last touchdown, they barely covered the spread. So this is one of those games where if you bet on the Patriots to cover the spread, you're really happy that Tom Brady decided to run up the score. And if you're a Dolphins fan, or if you took the Dolphins to cover the spread and you put money on it, you're a little bit irritated. You're a little bit salty over Brady's constant heroics. But this is the thing. The Patriots committed a lot of turnovers in this game. I watched it on CBS, and if they commit these kind of turnovers against the teams like the Eagles and the Steelers, they're not going to repeat as world champions. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to leave it at that. We'll see how the season plays out, but they can't play this sloppy against teams like Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, assuming they get back to the Super Bowl and assuming that their opponent is the Eagles. Because Tom Brady just missed a fumble, like he lost focus for a split second. Dolphins turned it into a fumble recovery for a touchdown. And then there was another play where Brady threw a pick after the Dolphins got a field goal, but the Dolphins couldn't capitalize on it. And Matt Moore threw an interception. And the Dolphins had the ball at the New England 35-yard line. If you give Ben or Carson Wentz that opportunity, they're probably going to capitalize on that, Joey. I mean, let's face it. So the Patriots have to manage things better on the offensive side of the ball moving forward. They'll still probably win these games, but I'm just saying that's something they're going to have to work on. And I'm sure Belichick's going to ground that.
And what do you think about McCaffrey not being in the running game for the Panthers?
The Panthers-Jets game, well, I didn't focus on McCaffrey.
McCaffrey not being used as a running back.
Has been dominating these last few weeks. I mean, 3 out of the last 4 Panthers wins, Kuechly's been the featured player on our site because of how good he was. And he had that fumble recovery for a touchdown, which put the Panthers ahead. There was also the Kalen Clay punt return, which, while impressive, wasn't as impressive as Kuechly's fumble, but it was still impressive. I was more focused on Kuechly and Kalen Clay's play at punt returner more so than McCaffrey.
Well, I don't really pay attention to Kuechly because Kuechly's gonna do his job.
He does. He does do his job. He does it well.
McCaffrey not being the running game.
I can't believe Matt Miller said he was a third-round pick in 2012. I'm shaking my head over that. Can we move on to the Eagles-Bears before we get to the late games, please?
Yeah, we need to move on. We're lagging behind. We got a lot of stuff to cover here, and the NCAA is going to major focus for us, so folks, tune for that. The next game is the Eagles beating the Bears. This barely any type of Ming 23. Carson Wentz 23 for 36, 220 yards, 3 times for failed receptions and a touchdown. Beat 4-13. The Wilson 2 8 yards, 2 downs. Once again, not going here. The Broncos and Raiders. The Raiders 21-14, 5 and 6. Derek Carr 18 for 24, 253 yards, 2 touchdowns. Marshawn Lynch 26 carries, 60 yards down. But the thing with this game is Paxton Lynch has gotten a lot, I mean a lot of backlash for being in there. How poorly he played. Now he's out with high ankle strain, and I know and Romero is cheering that he does not help with Pat Lynch this week, as Lynch is going to be out for the next games. So
yeah, I mean they can start Chad Kelly, but I don't think they'll turn
shining light there.
Yeah, and with the Eagles Bears, there's really nothing much to say other than Carson Wentz played like a touchdown machine. And Trubisky played like a human garbage, you know, one of those garbage disposers outside of the streets of Philadelphia. That's basically how Trubisky played. There's really nothing else to say about that game.
Yeah, and
I think that
Rams beat the Saints 26-20.
This is a feature game, and Rams beat coming out for Cooper Kupp.
20. Yeah, the Rams beat the Saints 26-20. Cooper Kupp led the Rams in receiving 8 receptions, 116 yards.
And Robert Woods was injured for this game.
Finished
so
with
Cooper
28,
Kupp
43,
had to step up and be the
350
man,
yards,
and
2 touchdowns.
That tells me something. That tells me that Kupp's ready to be promoted from a slot receiver to the number 2 guy on this team, because if Robert Woods gets injured and he shows that number 1 ability, that number 1 leadership he had at Eastern Washington, it means it's time to promote him. It's also time to promote Josh Reynolds from the bench to the slot role, because Reynolds actually looked pretty good in the slot. And I've always felt he's a slot receiver at best, but at the same time, he's great for depth. And the Rams developed him correctly, and then they waited to put him in. And there's Rams fans saying that Watkins is sluggish. And if that's the case, he's in a contract year. You bring back Woods, you bring back Kupp, you bring back Josh Reynolds. Watkins walks. You don't need to draft another receiver. You move on. It's pretty straightforward. And you got Higbee and Everett back for another 2 years as well. So the Rams deserve a lot of credit for building this group of playmakers through the drafts, very similarly to how the Colts did this with Andrew Luck. So I'm going to give their front office and Les Snead a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, and the Jaguars offense failed to show up as the Colts beat them 24, and Blaine Gabbert 22 for 32 and 40 for 2 touchdowns. Packers lost to the Steelers 31-28, and this was Ben Roethlisberger's 33 for 35, game, going 351 yards, 4 touchdowns, his best game of the year.
All right.
Le'Veon Bell, his
Ben
best game of the year,
Roethlisberger
20
had 2
carries, 95
interceptions.
yards.
He had a
And
lot of
Antonio
careless
Brown
throws
once
in this
again
game. He had a
dominated.
couple
10 receptions,
careless
169.
throws. Ben, the quarterback that was the most impressive in this game was Brett Hundley. The receiver, Antonio Brown. You want to talk about Antonio Brown balling out? You're welcome to do that because Brown had 2 touchdowns, 2 critical plays in the fourth quarter, really stepped up and balled out with Juju injured. So you can praise Brown, but Ben had 2 picks and Hundley had none. So as far as I'm concerned, Hundley had the better game because he had 3 touchdowns. I know Ben had 4, and that was the difference. But it was one of those games where this game was so evenly matched. Hundley avoiding turnovers and Green Bay playing up to their potential on offense. It's a game that was so evenly matched that Pittsburgh had to win it on a last-second field goal. And Hundley stepped up to the plate. Now, if Hundley plays like this in the final 5 games, the Packers have a chance. But most likely their season's over. But Hundley had 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. And this was the first game where you looked at and you said, maybe Hundley can be Rodgers' successor. It's too early to say, but I think he saved his job for another year with this game. I don't know if he's the quarterback of the future yet, but I can guarantee you with this game, this is the game that the Packers coaches are going to look back and say, you know what, Hundley played well enough to save his job. We don't have to draft a quarterback.
Yeah, and we're moving on now to the NCAA since we had a lot of work
I do have some
going with
news
the
on some
NCAA
underclassmen declared for the draft, and I have news on the new Senior Bowl invites because every Monday,
we can deal with that a little bit.
Savage reveals the new Senior Bowl invites every Monday.
We can deal with that.
We'll get to that at the end of the show. Let me finish before I let me finish what I'm going to say. Okay, this is a communication thing. Go on. We can start the college projections for stuff. We can start the conference championship stuff. All right.
Now we're gonna move on real quick to the current playoff picture with the NCAA before we go conference championship games on this week. The playoff picture as of right now, week 14, we have number 1, Oklahoma at number 2, Wisconsin number 3, and Auburn at number 4, with Alabama at number 5 and Georgia coming in at number 6. Chris, what do you think about rankings?
Well, I don't know if ESPN's going to unveil the official rankings on Tuesday because number 1 and number 2, Alabama.
Well, that's what I've got.
They both lost. Right, okay, Joey, let me finish. Alabama was number 1. They lost to Auburn on Saturday. Miami was number 2. They lost. I don't remember the last time we saw 2 number 1 and number 2 teams go down the week before the conference championships took place. And this is huge because it alters a lot of things. I mean, Clemson's probably going to be number 1 in the polls now. And Oklahoma, in my opinion, deserves to be number 2 because they beat this Auburn team last year. But I also feel like the committee's going to show SEC bias, and they're going to put Auburn at 2 and Oklahoma at 3. But I think Oklahoma should be number 2. They honestly should be number 1. But the committee's going to look at Oklahoma struggling against Clemson in the playoff, and they're going to put Clemson at number 1 because of that, even though this Oklahoma team deserves to be number 1. So they're going to put – so I think Oklahoma should be 2, Auburn should be 3, and then number 4 is really tough because you can make a case for the Big Ten champion. You could also make a case for 1-loss Ohio State or 1-loss Alabama. I mean, I don't think Bama's going to get in, but they could. So they currently are projected to have the 4th spot. So this is going to get very controversial.
Yeah, and for some reason the ranking on the computer when I looked, but is what we'll go with that for now. That is at very least the 8 poll. So
There's
with
only two
those being
unbeaten
top
now.
6, those are the most
Wisconsin and
likely top
Central Florida.
6
Those are
for
the only two
the
unbeatens.
playoffs tomorrow.
Yeah. The Central Florida and Wisconsin are the only unbeatens.
Now, moving on, we're going to get to the big game Friday, December 1st, and Saturday, December 2nd. We have the championships. The big one that
Let's
I'm
focus
looking
on the
at
Pac-12
now,
championship first, and then focus. Let's get out the conference championship
probably gonna
that don't have
be
any implications. USC and Stanford play on Friday, and I'm going to take the Trojans to win this game. It's a pretty meaningless game, but because I don't think either team will get in the playoff, but I think the Trojans win.
Chris, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, your mic is breaking up, and so I'm gonna go ahead and go down through these games. Stanford D, and I want your Purdue wins. Stanford USC.
Stanford. I took the Trojans. I already told you. I took the Trojans, and
8 o'clock Friday.
Yeah, that game is on Friday, and it's a Pac-12 championship. It has pretty much zero implications at this point, and I am taking USC to win. So, yeah, I think Darnold does enough to beat Stanford again. He picked him apart earlier. Why can't he pick him apart now? Unless these corners, Holder and Meeks, unless they adjust and they both stay healthy, I don't see this Stanford team winning because the quarterback that you mentioned on Twitter, he'd have to ball out again, and these corners would have to step up and stop Darnold. I mean, it could happen, but I think USC is going to win the Pac-12 this year.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Stanford on this one. I like what I saw over the last weeks from their KJ Costello, their quarterback. And so, I mean, he's a guy looking at heavy for the next years to what he does when he enters draft.
Yeah, he had one good game versus
Stanford. Bryce Love last year.
Yeah, he had one good game versus Stanford or versus Notre Dame last week, which you told me about.
Stanford.
I don't think he's as good as you're making him out to be. Yeah, I think there's a lot of better quarterbacks in 2019. I've already got a top 90 up. He's not on the top 90.
Well, he only has 5 games under his belt or something like that. 5, 6 games.
Okay, he's missed some games due to injuries, and he was really inconsistent in those starts prior to the Notre Dame game. All right, let's move on to the next game.
We'll find out because nobody lights the world on fire their freshman year in that type of offense. So we'll as the year
and Stanford's built to run
all
the football. So yes, Stanford's one of these teams that's built to run the football with Bryce Love. They're not going to have that next year, so we'll probably see his passing yards increase or skyrocket next year if he starts. He's only having these 170-yard games, but he can throw the ball deep on tape. So that 3,500 season that the scouts want to see, that'll probably be in 2018 because they won't have Bryce Love, and they had Bryce Love this year. That's why they chose to focus on running the ball. And Stanford, whenever they have a good quarterback, they'll throw it out and air it out like they did with Luck. But after that, they've sort of shifted their mentality to a run-first team these past few years.
Well,
I'm curious to see if they air it out more next season.
Well, I'm going to end this discussion with saying Costello said he wants to be a quarterback like Tom Brady, and he patents game after Brady, so patents the work ethic after Brady's work ethic. I think we'll let everything that happened play out, and we'll see what happens in a couple years. Next game is Memphis and UCF on ABC. Number 20 Memphis versus UCF number 15 and they will be on ABC and watch ESPN. So I'm going to take Memphis in this. Chris, who you have?
I'm actually going to go with common sense should say to pick Memphis, but I'm going to go with Mike Hughes. I'm going to go with Central Florida, and I'm going to take Mike Hughes at Central Florida because Mike Hughes is a first-round cornerback for Central Florida. He is a 2019 prospect. He might be eligible for this year's draft, but he's one of the best corners in the nation. So I think he can shut down Anthony Miller. He's about 5'11", 191. He's the same size as Miller. And I'm going to say that Mike Hughes ends up shutting down. I'm going to say he ends up shutting down Anthony Miller in this game. I really believe that. So I'm going to say that's what ends up happening.
Yeah, it's like we talked about yesterday. Miller has yet to show that he's an alpha receiver, but he does everything right and catches and thrown his. So I think it'd be more Ferguson in the game if Memphis wins than it is Miller. If Ferguson does, then UCL comes out.
I think the big matchup here is Mike Hughes versus Anthony Miller because I have a 2018 first-round grade on Miller. I have a 2019 first-round grade on Mike Hughes. So that's we both know that's the big matchup, Mike Hughes versus Anthony Miller, because Hughes is one of the best cornerbacks in the country right now for Central Florida, and he's a 2019 first-round prospect, whereas Miller's a 2018 first-round pick, and they both have the same height. So Miller versus number 19 on Central Florida at corner, that's the pay-per-view matchup in this game.
Okay. MAC Championship, Akron, Toledo, a game I've seen dozens of times. It's going to be on at noon on ESPN and watch ESPN.com. And I will probably, if I get a chance, I'll probably be watching some of the games on ESPN. And Akron and Toledo is a huge game, at least from being from the Ohio Valley. And I'm going to pick the Zips to beat Toledo in this game.
Did LeBron James tell you to pick the Zips? I'm going with Toledo. Toledo's got a quarterback named Logan Woodside. They've also got a receiver named Cody Thompson. They've got a lot of talent back. Even though they lost Kareem Hunt and Michael Williams and Storm Norton, they still have a lot of talent back on this team. And Toledo is going to do just enough to win this thing, Joey. You're going to see. Toledo is
let's face it. If LeBron James said anything, I'd probably ignore him because he's never really done anything of note other than people around basketball court. So, I mean, he hasn't done other than getting a bunch of guys together to barely win 3 championships out of, I think, 7, whatever it was.
I mean, I think this is Akron's first trip back to the MAC championship since the Charlie Fry days. Just felt like bringing that up since the Browns are 0-11. But moving on.
Yeah, we're still going to go with the Zips.
Toledo
because the
Rockets
Zips have a cool name, and I've always liked the Zips.
I like the Toledo.
So we'll just go with that because I've always liked them.
We've disagreed on all of these games so far. I love it.
I don't know. I've always liked the Zips. I don't know why. I grew up watching MAC exclusively, so, it is what it is. We will see the battle.
Are we going to acknowledge the Conference USA Championship?
We already know
North Texas, Florida, Atlantic,
game we get to here.
Are we going to talk about the
Oh, this
Conference
is a
USA
food
championship
game.
with North Texas, Florida Atlantic, or no?
Well, we have to. We talked about the MAC game.
Okay.
I'm going with Florida Atlantic.
This is the first game we agree on, even though I'm secretly rooting for North Texas to win because I want to see Lane Kiffin lose the Conference USA championship. But something tells me they'll win, and Lane Kiffin will win a Conference USA championship. But I want him to lose.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and UMass and at Florida International. I'm going UMass in this.
Wait, it's North Texas and Florida International and isn't playing. It's Florida Atlantic. The Florida International Panthers.
Florida. This is the next game.
Is this the Sun Belt Championship, Joey? I'm sort of confused here. UMass had a losing record, I think.
Chris, you're
no. I've got the scores on CBS right here, and I don't see UMass in here. I've got the scores right here. I've got the data. I've got the scores. I don't see UMass anywhere. They're in the MAC. What am I missing?
Well, that's the game. That's the game that is on here is UMass, University of Massachusetts at
Okay, the reason our scores aren't the same is because you're using ESPN and I'm using CBS. And UMass, I'll get on ESPN. I'll check out ESPN here. But
who do you have winning, Chris? I have UMass.
I'll take UMass because I have an NCAA dynasty where I took over UMass and tried to turn them into a 6-star school, and I landed a QB, that 5-star recruit with UMass in my second year. So I'll take UMass, even though this game has no implications on the conference championship. It's not a conference championship game according to CBS, but it is a regular season game.
Yes. And the big game of the week, we're going to skip over Florida State, Louisiana, Monroe because I don't
it's not
think
even a
it's
conference championship
mean
game.
anything. No, it's nothing important. We're going to go to TCU at number Oklahoma, which could determine a playoff spot.
If Oklahoma
I'm going with Oklahoma, a talented TCU, and I say Baker Mayfield has a huge game and claims the Heisman. Chris, who do you have?
I'm going with Oklahoma as well. Baker locks up the Heisman. Now, if TCU struggles in this game, or if TCU wins, it basically shakes up the playoff as well as the Heisman. Because if, let's say Baker for some reason had a 5-interception outing by some improbable reason, then it would shake up the Heisman as well as the playoffs. So I'm going with Oklahoma, though. I can't see the Sooners losing.
Yeah, I can't see them losing either. And we're going to move down. We've got some games on ESPN3 we're not going to worry about, but we've got number 7 Georgia against who is, as of right now, number 6 Auburn, and they'll be on CBS at 4 o'clock. I'm going to go with Auburn. Right now, Auburn is just clicking on cylinders, so going with the hot hand here.
Yeah, I honestly, there is a temptation to take Georgia here because this feels like a home game for Georgia because it's in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It's in Atlanta. And Georgia always plays well in Mercedes. Even when they lose, they still play competitive. So this is going to be a much closer game. And I think Georgia, for some reason, I feel like Georgia's going to win it. I'm going to go with Georgia, even though I'll probably end up regretting it. I know Auburn's got a very talented team, They deserve to be in the playoff with Stidham, with their defense, because they do have some great prospects on defense. But my gut is telling me Georgia's going to get revenge, and I'm just going to go out on a limb and take Georgia. I mean, Auburn beat them by like 40 points 2 weeks ago. That's still in their minds. They want payback. I think they win and get payback.
All right. Now, next game is a huge game. Clemson, who's going to end up being #1, is at the University of Miami, who was formerly #2 before losing last week. And I am going to take Miami at home, defeating and upsetting Clemson.
Well, the game's in Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte, where the Panthers play. So I know back in the old days, the ACC championship would be at the Dolphin Stadium. It's not the case anymore. It's now at the Panthers Stadium. So home field, Clemson wins.
That doesn't make any sense. But okay, whatever.
Look it up. Location on ESPN.com says Bank of America Stadium. They moved the game from Miami to Charlotte.
Yeah, it's like I said, corporate politics isn't supposed to make sense. You know that Bank of America bought that game and moved it to Charlotte, so we'll just go with that.
So you're blaming Bank of America if the Hurricanes don't win the ACC championship.
Who do you have? Miami?
I have Clemson. You have Miami. I have Clemson. I think Clemson wins with the home field. And
I'm going to win the prospects,
more talent.
So let's go Miami.
You're going with Miami. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, let's go you. And then we had the big game, one that everybody's looking forward to. This one should be a hard-hitting game. The Big Ten Championship, 8 o'clock on Fox. The big night game that's going to be going opposite of Clemson-Miami. We have Ohio State versus Wisconsin.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with...
I am so tempted to go Ohio State here, but I'm going to go Wisconsin with the upset.
I'm going with Ohio State. I mean, Wisconsin has not faced a team like this all year. Ohio State just has the linebackers. They've got the secondary. They are a team that's up and down, but JT Barrett, if he plays like he did versus Iowa or Penn State, they're screwed. If he plays like he did versus anyone else before that, they've got a chance. It's JT Barrett is going to be the X factor here. And
well, that's the thing. JT Barrett did go out late with that knee injury after getting hit by a cameraman and then aggravating it during the game. So that could be a factor if Wisconsin hits him a few times. So that's what you have to watch for. And that's the main reason I'm picking Wisconsin in this, because JT Barrett may not be at 100% going into this game.
Yeah, that's true. So we'll see what happens. This is going to be an interesting
It is interesting, and
there are other conference championship games that we skipped on, include Troy versus Arkansas State for the Sun Belt and Fresno State versus Boise State in the Mountain West. But the truth is, most people don't care about those conference championship games. Sorry, but we're not sorry.
Yeah, I don't think much of them. Chris, we don't have to talk about them, but give me your prediction for them anyway.
I will take the Troy Trojans to go into Arkansas State and win, even because Troy beat LSU. And I just think Troy is the best team in the Sun Belt. It's not even close. The fact that they went into an SEC team like LSU and beat them speaks volumes. And they gave Clemson problems last year too. So I expect Troy to continue their reign as Sun Belt champions.
Troy and Boise State in those games. So
yeah, I'm going with Boise over Fresno as well, with Archie Lewis at offensive tackle. He's been thriving at right tackle since returning to the lineup.
Yeah, and this is no respect to those games, Boise State and them, but, you know, everybody knows at this point Boise State, barring a major upset, Boise State's going to win.
Yeah, it's like this game is at Albertson Stadium in Boise, Idaho, where the blue turf is. So it's not in a neutral location. So the Mountain West, it's not that the Mountain West is terrible. They do have some good teams and some good NFL talent. It's just that the conference championship is not on a neutral field. That's why it's easier for me to take the MAC seriously than it is the Mountain West, because the MAC prides itself. It carries itself like a Power 5 conference, even if it's not one.
Yeah, even though it's not even close, it definitely carries itself as a conference that when you look at the games, they make them a big deal, even if in the grand scheme of things, they're really not. So,
The
I
same could
mean,
be said with the
it's
All-American Conference, because that's at Spectrum Stadium in Orlando, with Memphis and Central Florida being at a neutral turf. Maybe Spectrum Stadium's where the Central Florida Knights play. I don't know if that's neutral or not. I don't know. I'm not going to look it up right now. I'm just saying that the MAC takes pride in that. So yeah.
yes, they do. And Ohio University did accept a bowl invite. I'm going to look it up now because it's not on ESPN.
Well, I got some draft news as well. Connor Williams out of
Okay.
Texas has formally announced his decision to declare for the draft. He's also not going to participate in Texas's bowl game, pulling the Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey route. Both of those guys were top 8 picks. So does Connor Williams go in the top 8 of the 2018 NFL draft now that he's declaring?
He should, but he's just coming off an injury himself.
Yeah, this is the thing.
I mean,
when you watch his tape, he clearly has the best foot speed of any offensive tackle in the draft, which is why a lot of draft sites have him as their #1 offensive tackle, even ahead of McGlinchey. But the thing I noticed is he doesn't maintain blocks on tape. Plus, he's dealing with this injury.
He has his major thing. He has to prove that he is injury-free. He has to overcome. So we'll keep apprised of what's going on there. And
well, Michigan defensive tackle Maurice Hurst accepted his Senior Bowl invite today too. Phil Savage posted the new Senior Bowl invites. He does this every Monday. He updates the Senior Bowl invite news, and Hurst accepted an invite. He's probably the top Senior Bowl prospect who accepted a Senior Bowl invite, because Hurst is a guy who I moved into the first round of my mock 2 weeks ago. Okay, and there's a lot of people that think he's the top defensive tackle in the country. So for the Senior Bowl to get Hurst, that is a huge win for them. Sean Welsh, who got moved out of my guard rankings a few weeks ago when we put Ben Schwale and got a Senior Bowl invite. So he'll get a chance to redeem himself. Trayvon Henderson out of Hawaii. Isaiah Wynn, the Georgia right guard, is going to Mobile. Dimitri Flowers, our top fullback, is going to Mobile. Teron Johnson, Weber State corner, going to Mobile. Chris Herndon, the 4th Miami Hurricanes starting tight end this year, is going to Mobile. Miami's just developed a reputation as one of those tight end schools. So Herndon might end up emerging in this class. Garrett Dooley, a Wisconsin pass rusher, is going to be in the Senior Bowl. Justin Jones, the starting defensive tackle at North Carolina State, is going to be in the Senior Bowl. We talked about Bradley Chubb and Kentavious Street yesterday and that NC State defensive line, and now another senior at defensive tackle going to Mobile. So any thoughts on those invites, additions? I think we both agree that Hurst is the biggest one. And outside of Hurst, Miller, and maybe Okorafor, if he accepts, there really aren't that many headline players. Like last year, it felt like there were at least 4 or 5 first-round prospects in the game. And right now, we only have 2. So sort of underwhelming.
Yeah, there's I don't really have much to say for it. Hurst definitely makes it a better, but the game itself this year is
up to the Senior Bowl in January. Every week in December, they'll announce more invites.
Well, let's hope that the quarterbacks can
keep track of the accepted invites as well as the players who've received invites, because some of the players, they don't always necessarily accept invites. I know Cortland Sutton received an invite, but he hasn't accepted it yet. So he's probably going to evaluate his stock soon, speak with a draft advisor.
Well, let's just hope a couple of these quarterbacks can pull this game out of the gutter, because I don't see it at this point.
The 3 quarterbacks that got Senior Bowl invites were Barrett, Baker Mayfield, and Mason Rudolph, and Josh Allen out of Wyoming and the Virginia quarterback have also been offered invites. None of those 5 have accepted yet.
Yeah, well, somebody's going to accept, and hopefully they bring some attention to this because right now it's not looking good. But we do have a bowl game to talk about. The Bahamas Bowl is set. It's going to be Ohio University. This is straight from the Athens Messenger in Athens, Ohio, going straight up with UAB in their first year back in college football. Chris, what do you have to say about this one?
Yeah, I mean, this game, I know about the Bahama Bowl, Ohio versus
UAB.
UAB. I knew it was UAB because I have a friend on Facebook who used to be a professor at UAB, Tim Stevens, and he was talking about how fun it would be to go to the Bahama Bowl with some of his friends. So I saw that post on Friday, and yeah.
Well, yeah, it's in the Bahamas.
So
I mean,
I'm going to. I know I love what Ohio's done, but at the same time, this is tough because I have to choose between Javon Hagan and my Facebook friend who is a professor at UAB. So I can't decide on who wins this game.
Well, I'm going with
Ohio, so I'm going to go with UAB.
I'm going with Javon Hagan in Ohio because Javon Hagan's a cool guy. Hopefully, he's got a chance to see some of those high school football games, as I suggested, down there around Athens, the Athens area, because they are always off the chains. And I would love nothing more than to see my Ohio Bobcats and Javon Hagan come back from the Bahamas hosting whatever trophy they win from winning the Bahama Bowl. And hopefully some of them come back with girlfriends because girls in the Bahamas, for the most part, look pretty nice. So, we're going to go ahead and we're taking the Ohio Bobcats. And Chris, who do you have in this? You can either go with our dude Hagan or we can go with your professor.
Yeah, I'll go with I just think Ohio has more talent. I'll go with them, but it's tough to say. I mean, this is
the only thing I don't like about Ohio, I do not like their quarterback. Their quarterback holds them back so much. I mean, he just does not throw the ball.
They got a good running back in AJ Ouellette. They got great linebackers. I mean,
their running backs and defensive back seven and
you look at Quentin Pauling,
awesome.
The junior who's team captain of that Ohio defense. You've got Pauling, you've got Hagan, you've got another guy next to Pauling on that outside linebacker because they had two junior linebackers next to Blair Brown last year. And those guys are seniors. They're the leaders of this team along with Hagan. So I'm going to go with Ohio. I just think there's more talent there. I mean, Popeyes was acquired by Restaurant Brands International, who declined to renew sponsorship. So the Bahamas Bowl used to be known as the Popeyes Bahamas Bowl. And after the game, you eat fried chicken. So we could have saw Javon Hagan with some Popeyes after this game. But thanks to Restaurant Brands International, Javon Hagan won't get Popeyes if
he can get Popeyes anytime.
Restaurant Brands should be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah, they've got a Popeyes in the Plains. They got a Popeyes on a back road in Athens. He can get Popeyes whenever he wants. I'm sure, and I'm sure he's had it a few times. So I mean, I'm sure we don't have to worry about him and Popeyes chicken. Okay, especially we don't want him to have Popeyes chicken anytime around that game because that grease and stuff cannot be good for him.
You don't want that in your system when you're playing the game. That's what I'm trying to get at, Joey. If you want to eat the chicken after the game and you win the bowl game, fine. That's okay. Just don't eat chicken before the game or during the game at halftime.
Yeah, if you eat it at halftime, I would probably fly to the Bahamas, stop time, except for my flying, get down there and not.
One thing I found out yesterday when the news about Mahomes starting came out, I think Trubisky actually tweeted something about it when the Eagles had the football. I don't know if he snuck his smartphone into the game and decided to tweet during the game, but that is a first. It's like an NFL player tweets during the game when they're on the bench. That is a first.
Yeah,
that's a huge red flag. But let's.
Yeah, it's stupid. But so we're super excited right now
Yeah, I
for
mean, a few of the
Ohio
coaching hires
State.
that have been made are Dan Mullen replacing Randy Shannon, and McElwain and Chip Kelly's replacing Jim Mora Jr. and Jeb Fish.
Yeah, and believe me, when Black Monday comes around, Jim Mora's name will be in the discussion for NFL teams.
He'll get a job as a coordinator. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised if the Giants hired him as an offensive coordinator and took Rosen, assuming the Browns passed on him. I'd love to see a Mora reunion with Rosen in the NFL. It'd be cool.
I would not be surprised if he is still there, whoever drafts Mora, because right now the Giants don't have an offensive coordinator and the Browns don't have an offensive coordinator. Well, the Browns don't have a lot of positions filled, which might be a lot of the problems they're having in the front office and with play calling.
Because remember,
they don't have
Stanford's running back coach used to be on the Carolina Panthers.
Well,
and then they rehired him and drafted Christian McCaffrey. So they got McCaffrey and his running backs coach from Stanford because he was a receivers coach with Carolina before he coached McCaffrey.
Well, my thought is Mora will go to either the Browns or the Giants, whoever decides to take Rosen.
Yeah. I feel like the Browns are going to go with Lamar Jackson, but I also feel like Baker and Rosen are probably the two best quarterbacks who are projected to have long-term success. But I think the Browns would go with Lamar, and it's more because I think Lamar has better character than Baker or Rosen. I think it's a character thing, and I think it's the Browns saying, look, we're going to be extremely passive and take Lamar because we don't want a quarterback we want a squeaky clean quarterback off the field. We've had Manziel, we've had Kaiser, even though the things have been blown out of proportion. We're just not happy with Kaiser's progress. Let's go with Lamar. We don't want any Baker Mayfield incidents. We don't want any Josh Rosen hot tub BS. We're just going to take Lamar because it's the safest route out. I sort of feel like that's the direction the Browns are ultimately going to settle on.
Yeah, I would be upset with that because I believe
I think that's what they're going to do. They're going to end up fighting them in the rear end, and the Giants are going to get a huge steal with Josh Rosen.
Yeah, I believe Rosen's the best fit for not only – I don't even think he's the best quarterback, but I think he is the best fit for the Browns offense.
Yeah.
I still say Mayfield is –
and take Lamar.
Yeah, I think Mayfield's the best overall quarterback, but as far as just a pure pocket passer, he doesn't have the mobility or all that stuff, but the guy that is the best pocket passer, because you have to look at – if you look at Mayfield, what happened this last week when he was stripped of his captaincy for that one captaincy, or however you pronounce it, in that 1 week, and benched for the first drive. Well, they say, well, he's benched for the first drive. It doesn't mean anything. But he was not a captain for that game. I don't think that a lot of people understand how much that means. But teammates did. He was not a captain. They brought his jersey out with them. That right there tells me as much about a guy as a teammate and a leader as you need to know. Suspended. We're going to go out there. We got another captain. Fine. They went out there with two captains carrying Baker Mayfield's jersey. You tell me right now that that isn't a guy I want leading my team, because that's exactly what got Byron Leftwich drafted in the top 10 was his teammates carrying him down the field. I don't know if people remember this. Was a long time ago. His teammates on a final drive, he couldn't walk, carrying him down the field, putting him under center, sitting in their positions, him snapping the ball, barely able to drop back, throwing the ball, ending up on his butt every play. His teammates picking him up, dragging him, carrying him down the field, putting it in there. That is what gets you drafted high, because they know that he is going to get his teammates behind him. He's going to be a leader. He's going to give them direction. That's what gets you drafted high, when you have that type of ability. And that is something that you cannot duplicate that. You cannot. So I think teams are going to look at that and say, yeah, he did all this, but look at that. You see what his teammates are doing? You see how much faith they have in him, how much respect they have for him, what he means to these people, and that that the other captains look at him in such reverence that they are taking his, instead of getting another captain, they're taking his jersey out on the field. So that is something, if you discount that for any reason as a scout or a coach, I have to bring into question, where you learn to scout, because everybody's talking about intangibles. And as much as you hate to say it, because you have to love it, because no matter what he did before in the season, doesn't wipe it away, but it makes you just put it into the back of your mind, because this guy is now probably at least the number 2 quarterback on a lot of draft boards, whether people admit it or not.
Team of the year, I think I tweeted at Jeremiah Miller, and I told them that they deserve to blah, 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 because they think Darnold's going to be the next Andrew Luck. And I called them out on it. I probably pissed them off, but it's like once I did that, I'm guessing they've started paying attention to Baker Mayfield, and then they jumped on the Mayfield bandwagon. I don't know if they listened to us or talked to their NFL scouts, but it's like, you know what? We were high on Mayfield since the beginning of the year. We call out
I've been driving that bus since this
Darnold and hyping him up, and it got to the point where I just lost it. So yeah, now people are talking about Baker. It's like, if you're not on the Baker bandwagon now, we're not giving you a seat. Joey's been driving this thing since 2015, along with another draft fan and Nick Martin, who does some good work for Behind the Steel Curtain. But other than that, nobody else has really been on the Baker bandwagon. Maybe Thomas Coburn as well, and myself. And then after that, it's like everyone's just sleeping on Baker. He creeps up. More people jump on the bandwagon. We're full. So if you don't think his college abilities translate to the NFL, you're not getting on the bandwagon later on. We're already moving.
Chris, I don't think people realize I'm driving the bus. The bus may be full, but the bus has a trailer hitch. They can jump in the wagon on the back. It ain't going to be a comfy ride. They ain't going to be in front, but they'll be there.
You can climb up to the roof of the bus like TJ did on that episode of Recess, where he was actually put a chair on top of the bus and solved everything from above by riding the bus outdoors. You can grab a chair, you can put it on top of the bus, and act like you're the king of the Baker Mayfield bandwagon. Because I know that'll really irritate Joey.
Never seen Recess.
It was like when I was 8 years old.
I have no idea.
You were in high school.
I remember the Magic School Bus. Magic School Bus, Chris. Magic School Bus. Think of Magic School Bus.
All right. What else do we have to add for today? Next week on my podcast, we'll cover defensive tackle rankings, and we'll preview the 14th College Cup, reveal conference winners, and I think we'll have a live playoff announcement, because we do this every year. Every year, since the ESPN playoffs are announced live at noon, every year we leak the playoffs on our podcast. It's been a tradition we've done the last 2 years, and we will do it once again. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll be a fun show. And yes, my headset did come unplugged again. It's an old headset, so
I think I'm going to bid on Joey's headset. Star has taken your headset and she's placed it on eBay.
Might as well. It's like if it wasn't a $60 headset, I probably would have replaced it by now. But yeah, it's like 4 or 5 years old, and it has a original I think it's like an original Xbox attachment or something like that. So you can unplug it here and plug it into your Xbox, to talk with friends on. So it's.
You mean like one of the original 360 headsets that you can
Oh,
plug into
hell no.
controllers? I have those. Those
No,
are
it's
cool.
let me take a look real quick. It's a Z2. It's a Z2 headset. So, it's an old model. It's an old model, but it still works, so we're good. But yeah, Chris, we're gonna have a good show on Sunday.
Yeah,
Hopefully, I'll
I
be
know
there
I've only scheduled
at
the
some
Sunday
point.
show for December because I'm not sure what we're going to do on the 10th, but I know the 11th through the 15th, that is the day they report all the big, it's the MLB winter meetings. That's the day they report all the big signings in baseball. There's also bowl games. So December's a big month. January's a big month. This
Yeah,
year,
so
basically, because the Shrine Game actually sounds more appealing than the Senior Bowl at this point, which is actually pretty sad.
yeah, and I'm sure we'll have
So we'll do
bowl
a Shrine
game
Game.
shows throughout the bowl
We'll do
week.
a week. We did a week of Senior Bowl coverage last two Januaries. We're going to do a week of Shrine Game coverage this year too. So we'll figure out the times and play those by ear. But I'm just saying, because the Shrine Game looks a lot more appealing than the Senior Bowl this year, and it's actually kind of sad, Joey.
Hey, it's like a good game is a good game. A good week of practice is a good week of practice, and good prospects are good prospects. So we'll go with it. And that being said, for Chris Ransom, I'm Joseph Potter. Like, subscribe. If you just want to talk about my monotone voice for a large thread down on the bottom of the video, please do that as well. So hit the thumb, do whatever you need to do. And for Chris Ransom of Draft Utopia, I'm Joseph Potter. Good night and take care.